Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Offbeat episode by OnRec. I am your host, Vansh Uppal, and today we have with us a very special guest, a computer science graduate from our very own IIT Roorkee, the man who practically started the CTF culture in our institute, co-founded one of the biggest tech clubs of IITR, InfoSec, and followed his deep passion for security, currently pursuing a Ph.D. in improving the security of practical software systems from CMU. It's my pleasure to welcome Jay Bosamiya, or as he might be better known in the CTF world, Foxtrot. Hello, sir. How are you?
Hi, Vansh. Thanks for that pretty nice introduction. Glad to be here. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm fine as well. So, how does it feel to be contacted like after such a long time by the students of IITR that we want to conduct an interview and just out of the blue?
It was a pleasant surprise. So I am generally in touch with folks who, across the years, I've continued to try to stay in touch. So I wasn't surprised that people, ended up reaching out, but I was pleasantly surprised that the podcasting scene is alive, that you guys are doing some fun stuff, and yeah, it was fun to be invited. Glad to be
Awesome.
here.
Same. We are glad to have you too. So, like before we actually get into the cybersecurity aspects and the infosec aspects, let's just begin with your journey as Jay Bosamiya, like before you became Foxtrot. So, like, what happened when you first came to IITR? Like, when you first entered the institute as a freshman, what were your expectations, hopes, fears, and everything?
That's a good question. So, before I started my undergrad, uh, I was kind of uh, trying to decide between two fields, computer science and theoretical physics.
Oh,
I ended up deciding computer science, almost like on a coin flip. That's not really true, but close enough. And then decided to join IITR. I've always been interested in research, so I was interested in the research aspects. I wanted to see, and talk to people around who, were interested in doing fun, cool things. And it was nice joining in and seeing that there were folks both in my batch and a few seniors. And over the years, as juniors joined in, it was fun. It's a bunch of like-minded folks who, want to do something, not just join a job and,
yeah.
be done. It seems like it's a crowd of folks who want to make a difference. So it was really fun.
That's awesome. So, what were these like things that you were like apart from making a difference? Like, what exactly did you have this field of like tech in like as you said you were also interested in theoretical physics. So, what were these
Mhm.
aspects that after coming to freshman year did you explore physics as well, or were you focused on more tech and computer based stuff and exploring that?
So tech, I mean, the physics side of things basically moved down to a hobby. I continued doing a whole bunch of reading, but it has continued to stay as just a passing hobby. Unfortunately, haven't had as much time these days. I guess a PhD takes up time, right? And yeah, as far as the computer science thing goes, I initially did not even know that security is, a field. I was aware of it as, oh, there are hackers and they spend time on it, but it seemed very different from anything academic, at least early on for me. Uh, Early on, I was thinking about things like algorithms, data structures, complexity theory, computability, much more on the theoretical side, which is how you'd see it connects up to theoretical physics.
Yeah.
I was thinking of myself as a theory person. And over time, I realized that, oh, security is a field I can look at, and there's people in academia actually looking at it. There's actual science to it, and yeah, it basically just kicked off an entire streak.
Okay. So, like you came across security as like basically while reading theoretically, and then you realized how interesting it was, and then you moved on with that. So,
Yeah, so I was doing a whole bunch of theoretical CS reading and stuff. The security thing was more so I just actually started looking at other university websites and so on, I saw there's profs who like their entire field is security, at which point I realized, oh, this is an actual field.
Okay,
So that was fun.
that's beautiful. So when you first came to campus, you must have joined some campus groups, right, and clubs.
Mhm.
So how did you like? I suppose like at that point of time also there would have been hundreds of clubs and so many people doing so many interesting stuff. So how did you decide which clubs to join and what to do and everything?
Good question. So I applied to three clubs, got into all three, and then decided to stick around for two in that first about a month or so. It's been long enough. I don't remember the timelines exactly, but so I've always been a geek at heart. The fact that a magazine had, the guts to name itself Geek Gazette was already exciting. So GG was definitely on my radar before I even joined Roorkee. Uh, like when I just heard about it, it was on my radar. For obvious reasons, SDS was on my radar, SDS Labs. And There was also PAG, since I had been doing competitive programming for, I don't know, I think 4 years before undergrad started. So, uh, given that I've been doing competitive programming and there's a competitive programming group, PAG kind of just made obvious sense. And then I got into all three with the interviews and stuff, and then realized that it's going to take up too much time. So I decided to filter that down to just GG and PAG.
Okay, awesome. So you started InfoSec, right? So what exactly can you like if you go into that side? Like you were already a part of GG and PAG, and then you decided
Mhm.
that I should found another club based on just CTFs and the entire information security side. So how did you get across that idea that instead of just usually what happens is whenever you strike across a new topic, you talk with your friends and then you are like you just participate in the contest and you are done with it. How did you decide that we should form an entire club which is revolving around cybersecurity and everything? How
That's a
did you
good
come
question.
across?
That's a good question. So, first off, I do want to correct you a tiny bit. I was not the founder of InfoSec itself, since information security has been around for a while, right?
Huh. The
InfoSec
InfoSec.
IITR in particular,
Yeah.
it's fine. Uh, just try to make that a little bit clear. But anyways, so InfoSec IITR, right? It did not begin as I want to start a club. Indeed, I just met up with a bunch of friends and we formed a team and we took part in contests. So the original team that began was called Team Kernel Panic, where kernel is spelled Colonel, thus the pun. We're kind of really proud of that pun. We started that and did that for a couple of years. And we realized that it's just folks, it's just a bunch of us friends, and there are very likely people interested across Roorkee in the sorts of things we were interested in. So we started discussing amongst each other, and we're like, let's start something and see if people are interested in jumping in. And that was around my third year or so. Again, I don't remember the exact, founding date because it started as an idea, and then the idea just morphed into this club as people started joining in informally, and then we started thinking about, oh, we should probably have some policies around who's allowed to join, which we decided having an open policy would be a good idea, at least at that time. And yeah, it just began from there. It was very much an organic thing. It wasn't oh, I have a plan to start a club. It was more so, I want more people who are interested to get a place to meet up. And
So
beyond that,
basically,
uh, people are going to figure stuff out.
so you just wanted to find, like, as you said, like-minded people. You just wanted to find your
Yep.
own crowd. So how do
Yep.
you like when you started, like, as you said that you just sort of formulated like a discussion group and then you slowly started participating in CTFs and everything. Had you ever like thought? the InfoSec IITR would reach the stage that it currently is. Like it practically, like I think it's one of the best CTF stream I have ever witnessed in the entire nation, at least. And they have been winning so many CTFs and everything. So had you ever thought at that moment that this small discussion club that I'm finding will soon gain this much potential, will have this much impact, or was it just key?
So honestly, it's a mix of both. One is that even as Kernel Panic, which was a smaller team, we were, rising up to top of India's ranks at least. So, however, we weren't quite breaking in on the international scene as much. The slightly selfish reason for starting InfoSec IITR was larger crowd. We can have a better chance at breaking, the international scene as well. So, in some sense, I'm not surprised that we started, doing so well across India. Uh, we have had some good competitors, but at the same time, at least back when it began, there weren't too many competitors across India who were playing CTFs. So it was a slightly easier time starting off. And then, a bunch of those competitors still continue to be my friends. We still meet up. I met up someone else, I think just 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
So we competed in contests against each other for years, and this we just met up at a conference. So like I'm not surprised. It's not just folks within the campus, it's these other teams as well, and like they drive each other into doing better. And I did kind of expect us to get better over time, but at the same time I was a little bit worried that once those of us who began the thing left Roorkee, I was a tiny bit worried about whether it would survive, because we were starting something new. We didn't know how to keep something living for a long time. We had we were figuring things out as we go along, and I was super lucky to have some juniors who absolutely loved what they were doing, and made sure the team survives. I think a lot of it is on them making sure that the longevity is maintained. All I did is I kicked off the spark. Keeping the flame alive has been, everyone in the team who's done it.
Wow, awesome. So as you said that at the time that you started, and obviously when you graduated that then too, CTS and the cybersecurity wasn't really a prominent field, especially in India, right? So how did you like decide? Like as I've seen, cybersecurity doesn't have that many opportunities per se which are famous, which are prominent, which are well known. So people
Mhm.
do cybersecurity as a hobby and then they pursue this normal software engineering and all. So how did you decide that like how did you find that confidence and how did you make that firm decision that no, I will be going deep into the research when it would have felt that this might not like this wasn't a prominent field per se. So how did you take that decision? That
That's a good question. I don't think there was a single day I can point to that I made that decision. So the way I like to do things is if I find something interesting, I am going to dive deep. What I've found to be true across the years is there's no harm in diving deep. You will always find really interesting stuff, and there's basically jobs for everything. Uh, like there's just no point worrying about that. If you really enjoy what you're doing, there probably is a job. The tech field is so vast. It's still it's a few decades old, but it still is a very new field compared to everything else, which means we still haven't even understood the potential of what jobs could exist. Think back 10 years back, there was no such job as YouTuber, and now there are kids who want to grow up to be a YouTuber, right? So think about the YouTubers of today. They couldn't have made the decision to become a YouTuber. They were doing it because they enjoyed it. And it's essentially that, I continued to think of it largely as a hobby and just continued on because I was having fun. If I wasn't having fun, I would have given up. There's just no point. And that's I think a really nice filtering function as well, right? Like, why run after something if you're not having fun? Uh, and then once you jump in a bit into, trying to see what jobs actually exist, what you do realize is that uh, anyone who's really diving deep and getting good at security necessarily has to get good at all kinds of things related to computers. So dev jobs are basically always open. I think a whole bunch of folks from InfoSec IITR have, eventually moved on to dev jobs. There's a few who've gone on to do masters and PhDs. There's a few who've continued on to actual security jobs. Some on the defense side, some on the offense side. It's a wide space. I don't think there's any real worry about jobs. I do agree that uh, at least earlier on there can be apprehensions for people because it's not the norm of what everyone does. When everyone around you is doing standard dev jobs, it's kind of hard to see these other opportunities, but I assure you they exist everywhere.
Okay, so can you elaborate a bit on these other opportunities? Like, for example, if some cybersecurity enthusiast is watching this, they would like to know, like, if, like, for example, as you weren't really interested in dev that much as well. You mentioned in your blog that how dev you tried dev, and then as you said, you did not have fun. So why continue if you are having fun, right? So, what are these opportunities in cybersecurity as well that a person can pursue?
So there's a whole span of different things. On the probably most well-known side, there's pen testing. Pen testing involves, uh, uh, look, companies pay you to try to break into their systems using essentially known attacks. Uh, and what companies want you to help them figure out is whether they're up to date on things. They're making sure that they're not doing stupid things. Uh, there's the it's a really hard, really fun job. Uh, Unfortunately, not really the style that I personally enjoy, but it is a really popular thing. Then there's offensive security jobs, which generally tend to be like government contractor stuff, or they're a lot more shadier than that. So let's just stick to the government contractor or the government itself, right? They're of course every single nation state wants to keep its cyber capabilities strong. So of course there are jobs for that. I personally haven't looked into too many of those. Then there are offensive security jobs at companies themselves, bigger companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, so on. They have uh, jobs where your job is to attack the software that the company is building itself. Essentially, try to find 0 days before the outside attackers ever do. Uh, so you're inside the company, it's much better for the software to break that way. There's also, of course, defensive security jobs, where it's your job to make sure that things you know
If
don't
someone
break,
is
or when they
attacking,
do. Sorry.
so basically protecting against an attack, like if someone is
Right,
potentially
right. So that there's incident response. So uh, inevitably there's going to be an attack. How do you handle it? How do you figure out what's happening along the way? So incident response is a thing. And then, of course, there's the much more academic side, which is where I have gone a lot more in. There's tons of research to be done. There's huge number of open questions. Like one of the questions I've recently been looking at has been how do we take some of the worst, most terrible software you can find and add that into your process? Say you're importing a library, you want to parse JPEG images, you want to import libjpeg. Libjpeg is really nice. I don't mean to imply that it's bad software, but it probably has some bugs. It probably can be attacked, but I need to import it as a library. So if I put it into my process, am I not vulnerable the same way? So with some of the work that I've done, turns out not really. You can mitigate the problems, put things into a nice, provably safe sandbox, and still survive. So there's really fun, interesting, in-depth questions to be asked on the academic side as well. And these days, a bunch of universities are having cybersecurity focused master's
Hmm.
programs as well. There's cybersecurity focused PhD programs. So the larger lab that I'm part of, called SciLab, is the security and privacy lab. So these things do exist, and it's just a large open space of potential things to do.
Wow, there are actually so many options. Personally, I did not like, even for me, this was a very informative part. Anyway, so going back to your personal life, in third year, you did a research internship at CMU itself. So can you describe a bit about that
Mhm.
journey? How did you apply and what was the reaction when it finally came through? Like you have got the research internship and everything.
That's a good question. Uh, I kind of knew that I did not want to spend too much time on standard software dev internships. So I was looking for something different, and not too many people, at least at Roorkee, tend to apply for research internships. However, you know, there were a few. So I spoke to some seniors, and generally the advice I got was apply to as many places as possible, which is advice that felt a little wrong to me. It felt like spray and pray, which very much does not feel my style. You might remember I applied to only three clubs, and even then
Yeah,
I turned one of them down. So
exactly.
that's more my style. Due to that, I started thinking about how do I change the formula up? How do we make this, more deterministic, increase the probability of success, so to say? And thus, I applied to exactly one place. I sent exactly one email and hit 100% success rate there. And
Wow.
the way this worked, right, is you can't just send a generic email. You like that's what everyone does. You need to stand out. So I actually spent a few months reading up research papers by this professor to understand what's going on, try to come up with ideas, try to come up with a plan for what I would do over the 3 months. So it was a very specific, research proposal itself that I sent in. It was, here's what I plan to do. And it would be nice if I could do it with you. I'm planning on doing this anyways, but let's work on it together. Uh, and in fact, that particular year, my internship advisor, David Brumley, he was not planning on taking any interns. And nonetheless, he replied saying, that's a really specific and well thought out email. We should really think about this. Let's have a chat. And essentially, a conversation began from there. So that particular email that had the wasn't planning but still wanted to consider me there. That was a big deal. That was a like it was a massive uh, positive ego boost, essentially, that this style can work.
Wow.
Like putting attention, putting focus in has payoff. Now, of course, I was playing a high risk, high reward game. If it didn't work, I had no internship. I did have a fallback. That's a secondary thing. Having a fallback is very useful. It allows you to take these kind of risks. But on the other hand, the high reward was I would work with the person that I specifically intended to work with, rather than just one out of n
Random.
people who I maybe would like working with. This is someone I actively wanted to work with. So
Wow.
yeah, overall, I think it was a fairly different style than most others are used to. And again, I don't know if this works for everyone else. I am only one data point. So do not take this as if you apply with one email, this will work. But at the same time, do take it as the data point that you do not need to do the standard thing of spray and pray. In fact, having been on this side of the fence and talking to profs here, some profs get very, very, very annoyed at the generic emails. Uh, and some people end up in spam filters due to that reason. So, well, yeah, I am very glad I sent a very specific, clean proposal for things.
Wow. Okay. So when like how was the internship experience at CMU? And did you like decide then and there that this is the place I want to be pursuing a PhD in cybersecurity itself, or was it afterwards as an option?
Uh, that's a good question. I really enjoyed my internship experience here. So definitely CMU was one of the top few places that was on my mind to apply for PhDs for, uh, or apply to PhD programs for. Uh, but I hadn't decided yet as to whether it was definitely the place I'd want to be at. Uh, so I did apply to, I think, 5 universities when applying to PhD programs. I was planning on applying to three, but my mom started getting a little bit worried. She's like, "Dude, that's a big decision. At least here, try to apply to a few more." So I applied to five, and uh, I got into three. The three that I wanted to.
Wow.
So uh, yeah, it was fun, and then it was a hard decision picking between the three. I'm not gonna lie, like all three places that I wanted to get into were good places where I'm sure I would have enjoyed myself even at the other two places, but I ended up picking CMU for a whole bunch of reasons, and it's worked out really well for me. Uh, I've been happy with that decision.
Awesome. So how is your life currently at CMU? Like how do you like the entire atmosphere and everything? Like, how is the institute?
It's really fun. So CMU is, as you might know, in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a mid-sized city. It's not as big as New York, where nothing ever sleeps. Nor is it in the middle of nowhere with just cornfields all around. It's got enough of a life, but also has enough peace. Lets you handle whichever side you want to. Uh, and overall, I've really liked the city. CMU itself is filled with some of the brightest minds of the planet. People who are extremely focused on jumping into doing cool things, and it's infectious. You want to do fun, cool things, uh, and it's really fun. I would strongly recommend applying to CMU.
Awesome. So, how's like you are part of the best CDF team currently in the world? Like EPP Plate Parliament Fawning is considered the best. So, how is your experience with that? Like as compared to Kernel Panic and PPP, what are the
It's been a journey. Kernel Panic, InfoSec IITR, and then PvP. Jumping into PvP was really fun. I think my personal, CTF skill level leveled up drastically after coming here. Again, like-minded people, meet up with a bunch of folks. I think every person is essentially the average of everyone around them. Surround yourself with people who want to do cool things, you end up doing cool things. So I've been really lucky to be here. I ended up taking over as captain of PvP for a few years. So that was really fun. uh, it's been a really fun experience to work with some of the smartest minds throughout, starting with kernel panic, moving on to infosec IITR, jumping into pvp. It's just I've been lucky to have really amazing teams throughout. Of course there are differences, but overall I think all three teams have been amazing, and I personally feel very lucky to have been part of any of them.
that is just That sounds really great. So just like if if I were to ask you that, what would you like the transition from IIT Roorkee and CMU? What would you prefer? Like which life do you like more? Like your life at CMU or the experiences and the fun that you had in IIT Roorkee? What would you if you had to choose?
That's a really fun question. There's different aspects to each of them. I think there's a whole bunch of aspects from Roorkee that I definitely miss, uh, and there's a whole bunch of aspects here that I like more than in Roorkee. For example, I definitely think people in Roorkee know how to party better, uh, whereas here there's more of a crowd of folks who want to sit down and play really fun, interesting, multi-hour in-depth board games, which is an entirely different style, and I've enjoyed both, uh, but it definitely is a non-trivial change over. uh, I think it's really fun. And in general, as you move on from one place to another, you start to uh, see how the vibes vary from one place to another.
Mhm.
And I think both have some really fun vibes. And it's been fun.
Awesome. So, like, this might be sort of a question, and you can choose not to answer. But as we know that there are a lot of hacking, like as you said, there are ethical hacking, like pen testing, and how companies ask you that just check a system if they're hacking and everything, if they are vulnerable to attacks or not. Have you ever actually been the attacker, like attacking someone's vulnerability or sort of unethical hacking aspect? Have you ever tried that?
So, uh, unethical hacking, not really. I've generally stayed on the good side. The On the other hand, I have attacked systems, uh, but uh, these are there exist programs where companies will actually ask you to break in, even if you're not a pen tester. Try to find 0 days in software. So, for example, Google has a bug bounty program
Uh,
on the Chrome web browser. So, at a certain point of time, I decided I'm just going to start reading the Google Chrome source code because, that seemed like a fun way to spend a few weekends. And I found a bug, submitted it, wrote up a report, submitted it, got a bunch of cash for it, which is always nice. Uh,
a good
but
incentive.
sorry,
A good incentive. Cash is always a good
it's
incentive
it's
person.
it's a good incentive. And I mean, the incentive for me was to understand, something as complicated as, say, the JavaScript JIT engine. V8 is a thing of beauty. These really massive bits of software, trying to jump in and see, how did these folks build something so awesome? And along the way, if I can contribute a little bit, you know that's where I think of my bug finding there jumps in. It's more so me just wanting to explore something fun. And so in that sense, I have attacked systems, but generally most of my attacking has been within CTFs. uh, the outside of CTFs has been generally with things like bug bounties, which perfectly legal, perfectly ethical. The most unethical thing I've probably done is, looked at this reverse engineering some single player games, which, I mean, it harms no one. I'm
Uh,
doing it to learn stuff. Technically might be against the EULA, but if I am not,
Harming
doing
anyone.
anything else with it, uh, I I personally don't consider that unethical. But the legality of it, uh, yeah, it varies by jurisdiction. Uh,
So, okay. Uh, if I were to ask you to, what kind of golden pieces of advice, like throughout this has been a very informative session. I am sure that anyone watching would be definitely, very well informed about cybersecurity and everything. So, if someone, let's say, who got inspired to start pursuing cybersecurity and everything, so what pieces of advice would you give them? What to do, what not to do, what maybe mistakes you might have made on the journey that you would have want to advise to juniors or something like that?
uh, I mean, my high level advice is find something you enjoy, find something you want to spend time at, find something that wakes you up in the morning. Find that passion. And finding that passion is not as easy as, you think about a bunch of ideas and, one day you're like, oh, that's my passion. No, finding that passion is more so just, look at four or five different things, spend some time with them, figure out which one do you feel like you want to spend more time in. Start diving in deeper. You're going to start realizing that it's way more interesting than you had ever imagined. And that's what ignites that passion. And once that passion is ignited, I think, there is no ceiling. You can just keep diving deeper and deeper and finding even more fun and cool things. But getting to that passion, getting to that, want to wake up in the morning and jump right in. I mean, I'm not a morning person, so for me, it's more like wake up at noon and jump right in. But finding that passion is really crucial, I think. And I'm glad I found my passion, after just a few tries. Sometimes it takes more, sometimes it takes less. But I wish everyone were to take that leap of faith that if you try something interesting, you will come to fall in love with it. I wish everyone were willing to take that leap of faith.
Wow, that's really like I'm feeling so inspired right now. I can only imagine what the audience must be feeling. Wow. So thank you so much, sir, for sharing such pearls of wisdom. Like it was really great having you. It was so fun and just awesome.
Of
Thank
course,
you so
I'm
much.
glad to be here, and thanks so much for inviting me. Yeah, I'm really glad you guys are doing this podcast thing, and hopefully I hope this continues for a while.
Yes, sure, sure. So thank you so much, sir.